Bhagavatam, short Bhagavatam class. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devin Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Today we are actually moving into a new chapter. We are going to the 5th chapter in the Canto 1. Chapter's title, Narada's Instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. Let's read the verse. Suto vacha atatam sukam asina upasina brihatsravaha devarisim praha viprasim vinapani smayan iva. Suto vacha atatam sukam asina upasinam brihat shavaha devarishi praha viprasin vinapani smayan iva. Word to word translation, word to word meaning and translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Suta Uvacha said, Ataha, therefore. Tam, thank you, Prabhu. Tam, him, Sukam, Asina, comfortably seated, Upasinam, on to one sitting nearby, Brahat Shravaha, greatly respected, Devarasim, the great rishis among the gods. Praha said, Viprasim, on to the rishis amongst the brahmanas. Veena Paniha, one who carries a veena in his hand. Smayan Eva, apparently smiling. Translation. Yeah. So, Suta Goswami said, thus the sage amongst the god Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the Brahmana Vedavyas. Purport. It's a very small one. We will read it. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Narada was smiling because he well knew the great sage Vedavyas and the cause of his disappointment. As he will explain gradually, Vyasadeva's disappointment was due to insufficiency in presenting the signs of devotional service. Narada knew the defect and it was confirmed by his position of Vyasa. Just invoke the prayers before we start dwelling into the subject. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjala Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Bhutali Srimade Jaya Padaka Swami Dinamine Namo Acharya Padaya Nitakapa Padaya Gaura Namadaya Nagaravinamata. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you again. I again thank for the service given to me. And for the next 20-30 minutes, we'll try to share the points as Vasudev wanted to, or Srila Prabhupada intended to, with the same mood, we would try and discuss this. Hare Krishna. Minimize the screen so that it is easy. Okay. Now, this particular verse where we are at, first and foremost, we are going into the new chapter. So we will have a small background or a connection, and then we'll. So we all have know that last, in a way, the last 2 3 weeks we've been very nicely sharing and enjoying those questions posed. What was the replies? All that. So to to start with, there were three more questions, if I have to say. One was what it was about Srimad Bhagavatam origin. Second question which was posed to them was appearance and glories about the pastimes of Parikshit Maharaj. And the third point was Sukadev Goswami's position and how he met Parikshit Maharaj. Now, if you see the first canto, the three questions, almost in the fourth chapter, all these three questions up till about mid of that, these three questions were posed, and the remaining chapters in the first canto are going to be answers to these questions by Suta Goswami. Okay, almost till the end of 19th chapter of the first canto will all have elaborations of these answers for all these three questions, right? What was the first question regarding Srimad Bhagavatam? Suta Goswami has began to reply. How is it? What did he start replying? What was the state of the author, Srila Vyasadeva? What was his state or what was his position? Why was his despondency? He starts, we all know that Vyasadeva is actually a knower of the future. He can see those future. He really saw how degraded the Kali Yuga is going to be. And we heard that he had very nicely prepared, uh, considering the fallen souls, he had nicely divided the Vedas. We learned, he created professors who's going to separately communicate this to the start a lineage, wrote separate scriptures for women, and so many Upanishad, Mahabharat, all that he had done. Okay, in a way, in short, Vedic scriptures are given to the humanity, even for the less intelligent people. Okay, now after that, we found out in certain shlokas, right from 26, what was his position? He said that not to shed, I was not happy. Then later, in a couple of verses later, asampanna, not satisfied. All those words were very clearly written, very clearly stated, which means Vyasadeva desire was spotless. Desire to serve was spotless. No one can even question that. However, though he had other things very clearly sorted out, we had all discussed in the last couple of verses that what was missing. What was that? The key aspect of giving Krishna's glories, Krishna's pastimes. That what was missing. Now, Vasudev, being incarnation, knew that he had done some honest introspection. What was that? In 31st sloka, he mentioned that, yeah, why he realized, he questioned, Kim va Bhagavata Dharma? What was the, didn't I glorify the Supreme Lord's activities? Then when he found out why, he says it was Priyaha, for who? Paramahamsas. Then he thought, oh, this pleases the devotees. But Taveva he Achyuta Priya, that is when he found out this also pleases the Supreme Lord, right? That is when he did this honest introspection and found the answers, because the Lord revealed those answers. Now we are getting into this particular today's verse, right? Upasina Brihat Shavaha, then Devarishi. So now let's see what was the second point. What were the conversations? What was the etiquette followed? Okay, and then what was Narada Muni's diagnosis in this entire thing? Now, see the wonderful conversations between Narada Muni and his disciple Vyasadeva. Now, Narada Muni starts by saying, thus sage seated, apparently seated. Okay, in the purport, he says, yeah, he will explain gradually Vyasadeva's disappointment and was due to the insufficiency. There are two, three very, very specific points which we can pick up. Okay, now, why is he not feeling deeply satisfied in the heart? Okay, Narada Muni is going to explain. Why was his despondency, or rather, what was the cause of his unhappiness at the heart? Okay, and most important, after having found out what was his position, what was his status, what would he do to mitigate the melancholy? How can he change that sadness? That is what. Okay, so the diagnosis will start now. Now, at this stage, I will still request this. We are going to engage in Srimad Bhagavatam. If anybody is still chanting or doing any other activity, I would request you to stop, because we are going to associate with Krishna. We're going to be with Krishna. So let's make the best use of this opportunity. So it says, as soon as Narada Muni arrived, Vyasadeva welcomed him, offered him the seat and some water, and speak to him with some nice words. See, look at these two, three things. He welcomed him, he offered him a seat, he offered water, and speak to him some nice words. This seems very basic, very, very simple things to do. Okay, now these has to be done. Very, very important. It was not as if they came, we have to have some high-end philosophical discussion or some opulent arrangements. No, it is very, very simple, basic things. And yesterday, whoever had, not yesterday, this particular Friday, someone had attended the special satsanga, which was addressed by His Grace Jagat Shakshi Prabhu. There you would have understood that he said it is the very important aspect that this entire thing should come very naturally. Okay, if you meet a Vaishnava, especially an exalted Vaishnava, rather every Vaishnava, we should show excitement that wow, because it's very rare. When I'm saying Vaishnava, an initiated disciple, okay, Prabhujis and Matajis, these etiquettes are very, very important. It is the triple S. In the triple S of our bhakti, it comes the last S, the sajachar. Needed, very, very needed. Even currently, we remember that once we had come to Madhurapati Prabhu's house, I think leader of Vedanta Chaitanya Prabhu, he was telling us that regardless of who the Vaishnava is, what is the spiritual status, if he's a sannyasi or a Maharaj or temple president or anyone who comes in, we should have the same format. What is it? Nicely welcome them. Okay, and this simple behavior will, if you do the same things, welcome them nicely, smile, give a simple seat organized, and if you do this, and anyone who are there for that particular such special satsanga organized specifically for Radha Gopinath circle, had this practical lessons too. How do we receive him from right from the door at the gate? How do we get him into the house? How do we make him sit down? How do you offer him a glass of water? All this. So if you do this, what does it do? What does this simple behavior attract? It attracts the mercy of Vaishnavas. It attracts the mercy of spiritual master. It not only attracts spiritual masters, mercy, the entire parampara acharyas, and even from the Supreme Lord, it attracts this mercy. So now, after having seated there, Narada Muni starts addressing. What does he do? He says, what does he start with saying? He's smiling and he knew very well, great sage Vedavyasa, and the cause of his disappointment. Right? Now, how is that the Guru knows the cause of his disappointment? Because if a disciple is very sincere, right? Disciple is very sincere, the Guru knows. And how does a Guru knows? We all know regularly we read the offenses. In that one of the offense, it says, spiritual man, not to treat a spiritual master as an ordinary person, because he's guided by the Lord within the heart, right? So Narada Muni knew that the disciple is what is his disciple's position? And then accordingly he responds very nicely. Smilingly addressed his disciple. If you really see a comparison of the situation, something similar was even Arjuna's position in while he was having the war, right? So he was in middle of all the just the start of the war, and Arjuna started his disillusionment, right? I don't know what to do. There are all my brothers, relatives, all the questions when he posed. Even there, Krishna was smiling and telling all those things. See, come and have a look at the great warriors. And of course, then he starts giving those heavy dosage of instructions, right? Something similar. The smiling is very common. Then he starts speaking these heavy words. Now, first line itself, Mathurapati Prabhu had guided me. If you start saying who is the sage amongst the gods, Narada. Now, I'm sure our entire team of people who are here would have read Bhagavad Gita, and those who have crossed the 10th chapter, there clearly a Lord is mentioning Devarasim Cha Narada. Of all in that, there are opulences mentioned, many of them, where he says, I am the tree, I am the banyan tree, and the sages of the demigods. There he says, I am Narada. And then he goes on to say Gandharvas, all that, and Sejam Kapila. Two verses we can pick up, 26 and I think 30, 37 or 35 or 37. Again he says Muninam Aham Vyasa. Of the descendants of Rishni, I am Vyasadev, right? Of the sages, I am Vyasa. So when actually, and even again going back to the Friday's class, Jagatshakshi Prabhu himself said that when in sometimes the Lord used to mention or address when Narada Muni comes in as, oh Bhagavan, come in. So that much he loves us devotees. Okay, and of course we have this practical references also that which I just now mentioned, that we know that Narada, or even they're all, or particularly Vyasadeva was a Satyaveksha avatar, right? So thus bring to the point that first of all we are talking about this exalted avatars, almost literary incarnations. Now, why is that it is still prevalent? This comes to the point that these practices in Kali Yuga is even prevalent right now. So now we established that who are these Vyasadev, who's Narada, spiritual master. He comes, he's going to now, I was talking about the diagnosis. He is going to give the diagnosis. Now, what is the diagnosis, right? He said he will explain gradually Vyasadev's disappointment, insufficiency. Now, what was that insufficiency? Now, if you really go if we are feeling whatever, if these days we go to a hospital and we ask for, we go when we have to meet a doctor, what does the doctor do? Gone are those days when the doctor used to just hold your hand and actually tell you what the problem is, given similar white color tablet and say everything will be fine. These days they immediately send you to a laboratory and says go get all these tests done. When you get the test reports, there are a couple of parameters written on this, right? What are the parameters? First one would say, like a broad sufficient, or it'll say insufficient, or deficiency. All these ranges will be given. If it is fine, it will say you are sufficiently taken care. If it is not, it will point out in your deficiency, or and accordingly recommended down, saying these nutritions or whatever. Or we may have to take this and go meet a doctor to actually give out those medicines or nutritions. Now, this is the nutrition which Narada Muni is going to give to. What are the nutritions which Narada Muni would be giving Vyasadeva will appear in the next couple of shlokas. But what now, why is this situation? Repeatedly we keep saying that Vasudev was in despondency, or he was not happy, or he was feeling insufficiency or loneliness. So many words have come in. Do you think actually Vasudev, after having said that he was a literary incarnation of the Lord, this was no, this is not because it was they were in that situation. We need to understand that it's all Lord's plan, right? To bring this entire Bhagavatam into the picture for all of us to get this 12 cantos, lovely 18 books to dwell into and enjoy this. That is the entire plan. Acharya has explained that these are very nice incidences just to establish. If you go back to again Bhagavad Gita, Lord also says evam parampara praptam, right? So what did he say? Sakalena Mahata, that is yoga nashta parantapa. What happened there? He says this science, the supreme science, this parampara was started crores of years back. I had told this to Manu, and from there, Ikshvaku dynasty, that was going on. But Lord says that was yoga nashta parantapa. That was broken. Now, Acharya has explained that, and even Lord himself says there that I had to put Arjuna into a similar situation. Why? So that he could start parampara again. He could glorify, I mean, he could give all the instructions to the Kali Yuga. The same way here, this was put into the situation so that Vyasadeva could nicely glorify all the devotees, and Srimad Bhagavatam would be there for all of us, right? This is another very important point. Last, while the purport Srila Prabhupada raised, after will explain gradually Vyasadev's disappointment was due to insufficiency. So we understood that this insufficiency would be filled in by giving the right nutrition, the right tablets, which means the right prescription. So the Narada Muni was a top-notch diagnostic then only, and presenting the science of devotional service. So please note, always Prabhupada uses one devotion is always prefixed by or suffixed later with service, and now he always prefixes in that line by saying science, right? So Prabhuji's and Mataji's, Narada Muni knew the defect very well. He then a perfect diagnosis, and this devotional service is a large subject, but it's very, very important that we understand that our entire bhakti process, devotional service, is not just the sadhana, right? It is definitely, yes, of course, sadhana is the key factor. How regularly you attend the Mangalarati. We also realized, having what was Duryodhana's only good point, which Acharyas have explained, because he attended Mangalarati, at least got the Sena. So sadhana is very important. Definitely, yes, that's why the sheets are there. But the other two aspects, the seva or the sadachar part, we realized that how important is that sadachar part. Even so much stress was there by His Grace Jagat Shakshi Prabhu. He told, don't just say Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Mataji, come in. No, he said it should come from the heart, right? Because meeting or associating with these learned scholars is always auspicious then, even now it is always auspicious. Okay. We, anybody who would have attended the special satsanga of His Grace Jagat Shakshi Prabhu will understand how it was. Okay, we do not differentiate anybody. In fact, so much so that it is prevalent now. Actually, I would go ahead and say, even if our leader, circle leader comes into the house, this is the way we need to be inviting him. We are all talking of few diamonds left over in this Kali Yuga. Vaishnava, an initiated disciple of a very, coming from a bona fide parampara, is very rare. Okay, we should invite, we should have this smile, very simple things. Of course, if you can make it grand, it is definitely recommended. But even if it is a very simple, it should come from the heart. And then we all knew what followed after Prabhu sat down. One full hour was nectar flowing from his mouth. So very, very important that these three aspects. So if you do not know how to behave with another Vaishnava, no matter how strong your sadhana is, we will definitely default. It is not like any other exams. These days, you hear all the exams which we have in the material world. You have to score 30 marks here, 30 marks here, and 30 marks here, 35, whatever we call it. No, in spirituality, you have to score 100 marks in sadhana. Your full entire tattva or seva 100 marks full should be there, and your sadachar behavioral aspect, how to treat another devotee, how to give the respect, which our Guru Maharaj has written an entire book called Vaishnava Ke, that also has to be 100 marks. Okay. So if anybody thought material exams or CA or other exams are tougher, this is the toughest, because we have to score 100 in all the subjects. So the science of devotional service, Prabhupada has written the science of devotional service, that is explained. Narada knew the defect and it was confirmed by the position of Vyasadeva. So these are the 3-4 points which we discussed. We brought it, the aspect of the connection, the background we discussed. Then we learned what is the diagnosis, what is the conversation. In that we also squeezed in what is the etiquette. Okay. Then we found out what is Narada Muni's diagnosis. Okay. And then we found some similarity in references with rather we found from Bhagavad Gita who these exalted personalities were, and how receiving, or how this in this Kali Yuga also these practices are still prevalent. How we treat a devotee, how we receive them, all these are still prevalent. And lastly, the insufficiencies, the diagnostic reports were revealed, and of course all the nutrition, what the prescription speakers in the coming weeks. So please don't miss this Bhagavatam class. By having pointed out these few lines, I would like to end here and ask other devotees to give your comments or any questions in this particular verse. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Prabhu. Before I end, I actually spoke to Madhurapati Prabhu before I take this point. We have hardly 4 lines. How do we generate the juice out of this? And I'll tell you something, Prabhujis and Matajis, he's definitely got the gift of reading this and picking these few points and gave me the guidance saying, dwell on these points and then you will get entire 30 odd minutes to speak to. So again, I would like to thank you, Prabhu, for giving those leads. And I, of course, heard 1 or 2 Vaishnava lectures, senior Vaishnavas lectures. And whatever I've said, this is from that. As always, if I've made any committed errors, please excuse me and point out those. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.